Hello. Thank you for joining us for another episode of This Week in AML. I'm John Byrne, Chair of the AMLRS Advisory Board.
And I'm Elliot Berman, our Creative Director. We are excited to welcome you to the This Week in AML podcast,
where we explore key news and developments in the global financial crime prevention community.
Hi, John. How are you this week?
Hi, Elliot. Doing okay. Well, we want to reference the fact that obviously we have a major presence in Buffalo, and I know that Frank has sent out a message on behalf of the company underscoring obviously the horrific nature of the shootings in Buffalo. So it's top of mind to the company, and I think we'll just leave it at that for now. But I wanted to mention that we obviously are well connected to that community, so it's hit everybody pretty hard.
Yeah, it sure has. Also want to extend a hearty welcome to the new company president, Tracy Mortensen. Frank is remaining as CEO, and he's going to continue to focus on growth and strategy. But Tracy joined the company this week, and we're all getting to know her. So happy to have that news as well. So I just saw yesterday the Tax Justice Network, which periodically, I think annually, publishes a Financial Secrecy Index, came out with the 2022 edition of that. And the U.S. was the winner. And in this case, winner means tops the list for having the most secrecy in terms of financial services, but it's really, at the top of the list because of the outsized impact that the U.S. Level of financial services provided to the world has. So it's kind of a scale. The index is both how secretive are your laws, but also how impactful is it because you're a big or small provider. I'm assuming you saw that.
Right. And just so folks know that the index, the good news, if there's any, is that as they indicate on their in their press statement, that the supply of various what they call financial secrecy services that oligarchs and tax evaders and corrupt politicians use, that's decreased globally due to a variety of transparency changes, reforms, legislation, that sort of thing. But as we just mentioned, in addition to the U.S., the 5 G7 countries alone, which besides the U.S. is UK, Japan, Germany, and Italy, they're responsible for cutting the progress against financial secrecy by more than a half. So, when the U.S. Is listed as number one in terms of deficiencies, that's obviously a problem. I find it a little bit not counterintuitive. So obviously folks should take a look and see how they do the metrics around the grading. But obviously in the US, we're going to have a beneficial ownership registry. We're also going to have an eventual focus on gaps in the real estate market. So there are places that the US is already working on, including, as we know, the Biden administration talked about a number of these reforms in their strategy on countering corruption. So, yeah, again, the movement is there, but at this point in time, obviously the Tax Justice Network felt it was important to reference this, and then especially because the G7 are meeting at this point as well.
Yeah, G7 finance ministers are meeting on Wednesday of this week, actually, when you and I are recording this. And it's interesting, TJN is using the announcement and the G7 meeting to call upon the G7 to commit to a global asset register. So essentially what that would be is a networked version of the various beneficial ownership registries regionally and at the country level into some kind of a global version. As you and I have talked about before, the U.S. is working on its first beneficial ownership registry at the national level, coming out of the AMLA Act. The regulations and the rules for it have not yet been announced, although we're certainly looking to see those. And as we've also talked about, one of the challenges about these registries is that they're not uniform in terms of who has access, who has to register, and things like that. So I think that that's a laudable goal, a global registry, or a global network of registries, but unifying the approach to them would be equally valuable, even if they weren't all tied together.
Yeah, and let's be realistic. Given the division in this country, I cannot imagine certain legislators saying, "Yeah, let's have a global registry of sharing information," which law enforcement understands and appreciates, but I'm not sure elected officials do. The other part of this, another advocacy group, the FACT Coalition, issued statements based on the Financial Secrecy Index report, and they referenced a few things that we've talked about before. One is, they want to see the implementation of the regulations, as we've mentioned, but they also want to see more funding for FinCEN, which others have suggested is important given all that's on the table with them. But also, I noticed in some of the things that the FACT Coalition mentioned, which is similar to criticisms we faced before, is to regulate gatekeepers. Lawyers, trust companies, service providers, formation agents. We've talked about that as well. So there seems to be a pretty consistent theme throughout that, until you do a number of these things, real estate, registries, gatekeepers, I would argue things like art and antiquities that we've talked about before, you're always going to have these sort of off ramps for criminals, and that's obviously important. You can't do it all at once, but I think we're probably more committed now as a country and probably globally than we've ever been in terms of addressing all of these gaps. It'll take a while, but you have to be somewhat optimistic that a lot of these things are on people's radar, which wasn't the case, a year or two ago.
I fully agree with that. There is directional progress. The challenge for these kinds of things is, one, collaboration and ultimately reaching agreement, but also not losing momentum. And whether and that can happen from all different kinds of things. I mean, it could be the result of elections. It can be the result of individual events. I mean, I think some of the momentum most recently has been driven by the Russian invasion into Ukraine, and a deeper dive by many countries into those countries' interactions with Russian oligarchs, who some of whom clearly didn't come by their wealth in the most appropriate way. Is that a nice way to say that, John?
That's a very understated way of saying that, right?
But hopefully, to maintain momentum, we don't need more international conflicts to occur, that we can continue to maintain a momentum across the globe, because it's really the right thing to do.
Right.
I would recommend to folks that they take a look at the index, not so much for the U.S. rating, but I think it's a very thoughtful way to go about trying to measure something that isn't so easy to measure. And we'll link to the website that has an explanation of how the rankings are built. So you should be able to find that. But again, if you go to Tax Justice Network, if you search that and then look at Financial Secrecy Index, you'll be able to find it.
Right. And then just when you do see that, you'll notice they've been around since 2003, and were officially launched in the British Houses of Parliament. So obviously a global organization, which should be obvious, but they've been around for quite a period of time. And of course, the FACT Coalition has been pushing for transparency for a long time as well. So there are a lot of organizations out there that have they're paying attention to where everything is going.
Yes, and as by the name, you can tell that the Tax Justice Network, when it was first launched, was focused on tax havens. But of course, the problem, as we all have identified over the last number of years, is broader than just tax evasion.
That's right.
So, okay. So, John, I will talk to you next week. Any other announcements for our listeners?
We have a podcast in the queue. I was able to sit down last week with Jamal El-Hinde, that many folks will remember, former deputy director at FinCEN, who's now at Clifford Chance, to talk to Jamal about his take on where we are today in the AML world. So that's coming out, and then we have some scheduled interviews with various government officials about cybersecurity and other things that are coming up. And as we are recording this afternoon, we are going to have a live LinkedIn that obviously won't be live by the time you hear this, about the illicit finance strategy just issued by the Treasury Department late last week. So staying as current as we can be, and we're always looking for people's thoughts and ideas for topics, themes, and speakers. So let us know who you want to hear from.
Yes, and the LinkedIn Live, you'll be able to view the recorded version of that session on the AML RightSource LinkedIn page. So when you hear this, the recording will be there and available. And we have several members of our advisory board who are well-recognized experts in this space. And I think you'll find it to be a very valuable session. So, John, you have a good weekend, and I will talk to you next week.
Take care. Stay safe.
Yep, you too. Bye-bye.